It all started with a smile. A bright, infectious smile that could light up any room she entered. Susan Cox, later Susan Powell, was born and raised in the quiet community of Puyallup, Washington, a place shaped by family values and by church gatherings. From a young age, Susan was known for her kindness, her bubbly personality, a deep, abiding faith that guided her every step. She was the sort of daughter any parent would be proud of, responsible, loving, full of life's promise. Her world was simple joys, spending time with her family, singing in the church choir, dreaming of a future filled with love and children. She was a licensed cosmetologist and worked at a financial firm, but her true calling was to be a wife and mother. And then she met him, Josh Powell. He appeared charming, attentive. To the outside world, they looked like the perfect couple, a picture of happiness. But pictures can be deceiving. Sometimes the brightest smiles hide the deepest shadows. The wedding was beautiful. Susan Cox became Susan Powell. They settled in West Valley City, Utah, a suburb just outside of Salt Lake City. Soon their family grew. First came Charlie, their bright, energetic older son. Then Braden, sweet and gentle. She was a doting mother, pouring all of her energy into her two little boys. They were her entire world. But behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding. Friends noticed subtle shifts in Susan's normally cheerful demeanor. She seemed more withdrawn, more stressed. Josh was described as controlling. He managed their finances with an iron fist, often leaving Susan with little to no money. He was possessive. He monitored her interactions. He tried to isolate her from friends and family. Susan confided in close friends about Josh's strange, erratic behavior and his emotional distance. She spoke of his unsettling obsession with his father, Stephen Powell. There were tensions over money, parenting, and the direction of their lives. Susan tried to make it work. She suggested marriage counseling. She prayed. She even wrote a secret last will and testament, a chilling document that hinted she feared her death might not be an accident. Susan felt trapped. Her bright spirit was being dimmed by control and unhappiness. She loved the man she thought she had married, but she was growing afraid of him. December 6th, 2009. It was a Sunday, a cold and snowy day in Utah. Susan spoke with her father, Chuck Cox, on the phone that evening. They talked about Christmas plans. A neighbor recalled seeing Susan, Charlie, and Braden playing in the snow outside their home earlier in the day. Susan put her sons to bed. She sent a final work email, and then silence. After that night, no one would ever hear from Susan Powell again. The vibrant, loving mother of two simply vanished. The next morning, the alarm was raised. Susan didn't show up to drop her sons off at daycare. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Calls to Josh's phone also went unanswered. Soon, the police were called to the Powell residence for a welfare check. When they arrived, they found the house locked up tight. No sign of forced entry, no indication of a struggle. But there was no sign of Susan, no sign of Josh, no sign of the boys. Their cars were gone. Finally, in the late afternoon, Josh Powell returned home. But he wasn't with Susan. His story was bizarre. He told police that he had decided, on a whim, to take his young sons on a midnight camping trip. 4 years old, 2 years old. A midnight camping trip. He said he took them out to the Pony Express Trail in the remote West Desert. He said he built a fire, made s'mores, thought Susan was at home sleeping. His explanation made no sense. Who takes toddlers camping in a snowstorm in the dead of night? He didn't seem particularly concerned or frantic about his missing wife. His demeanor was calm, almost detached. The investigation began immediately, with West Valley City Police launching a massive search for the missing mother. But from the start, their primary person of interest was Josh Powell. His behavior was more than strange. It was deeply suspicious. He was evasive with investigators, offering vague and contradictory answers. He seemed utterly unconcerned about his wife's disappearance. He hired a lawyer almost immediately and became increasingly uncooperative. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a mountain of circumstantial evidence that pointed squarely at Josh. They found a spot of Susan's blood on the floor of their home, near the sofa, which had been recently cleaned. In the family's minivan, investigators found a wet spot in the cargo area that had been cleaned with fans. Josh had rented a car the day after Susan disappeared, putting hundreds of miles on it in a single day, a trip he could not explain. He liquidated Susan's retirement accounts. He gave away her belongings. 4-year-old Charlie, in an interview with a social worker, mentioned that his mommy had gone camping with them, but that she had stayed in the car and didn't come back. This innocent, heartbreaking comment from a child sent a chill through everyone involved. Josh's story kept changing. First, he was gone for hours. Then, it was a shorter trip. The mystery was further complicated by Josh's father, Susan Powell. Investigators discovered that Stephen had a bizarre and inappropriate obsession with his daughter-in-law. He kept thousands of photos of her, many taken without her knowledge. He wrote explicit journal entries detailing his fantasies about Susan. Was Stephen involved? Did he know what happened? The case was becoming a tangled web of lies, obsession, and a chilling lack of cooperation. With Susan gone and Josh under suspicion, her parents Chuck and Judy Cox fought desperately for custody of Charlie and Braden. For months, the boys remained with Josh. The Coxes believed he was responsible for their daughter's disappearance. The turning point came in September 2011, when Susan Powell was arrested on charges of voyeurism and possession of child pornography. With Stephen in jail, custody of Charlie and Braden was awarded to Chuck and Judy Cox. For the first time in a long time, the boys were safe. They were home with their grandparents. Josh Powell was granted supervised visitation rights. He would see his sons only under the watchful eye of a court-appointed supervisor. On February 5, 2012, a Sunday afternoon, the supervisor arrived with Charlie and Braden at Josh's rental home. The boys, excited to see their dad, ran ahead and went inside the house. As the supervisor approached, Josh slammed the door shut and locked it. The supervisor, smelling gasoline, began pounding on the door and frantically called 911. Inside the house, Josh Powell had planned a final monstrous act of evil. He attacked his 2 little boys with a hatchet. Then he spread gasoline throughout the house and ignited it. Within moments, the home exploded into a massive fireball, shaking the entire neighborhood. First responders arrived to a scene of utter devastation. There was no hope of rescue. Josh Powell, in a final act of control, had murdered his own children and taken his own life. The news was beyond comprehension. It was a tragedy so profound that it sent shockwaves across the nation. In an email sent just minutes before the fire, Josh had written, "I'm sorry, goodbye." It was a cold, calculated farewell from a man who chose to create an even greater crime. Today, more than a decade later, the story of Susan Powell and her sons continues to resonate deeply. Chuck and Judy Cox have channeled their grief into advocacy, becoming champions for victims of domestic violence and family court reforms. The case has led to reviews of how domestic violence and child custody cases are handled, exposing the limitations of the justice system. Years have passed, but Susan Powell is still missing. She has been declared legally dead, but there is no true finality. There is no grave to visit, no place to lay flowers, only the enduring hope that someday she will be found. The haunting case remains a dark chapter in American crime history, but also a legacy of love. The undying love of a family that refuses to let them be forgotten. Susan's bright smile, Charlie and Braden's innocent eyes, are etched into public memory, a permanent reminder of lives cruelly stolen. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button, and let us know in the comments what case you'd like to see covered next. Together, we can keep their memory alive. Susan Powell, Charlie Powell, and Braden Powell. Gone, but never forgotten.